today. And this morning's Moravian reflection is from Genesis chapter 45, and it's verses 3 to 15. And it is the story of Joseph revealing to his brothers that he is in fact alive and that he is their brother. If you don't know the story, I would recommend reading it. It's really great, actually. But there are so many good things in this little passage. I was a bit stuck about, sort of like, okay, what could we talk about? Because there's so much to unpack. But I think the thing that really stood out for me is that we can see here that Joseph is clearly a man of faith, that he had faith in God. And his big story goes through so many different phases. And along the way, you'll see that there have been times where, unlike where we find him now, Joseph has been in places where he has had no power, no authority, no autonomy at all at times. And sometimes he's been met with kindness, with dignity and respect from others. But there have also been a lot of times where Joseph has been met with danger, where people have abused that power, and on more than one occasion where his liberty has been stolen. And yet, even after all of that, Joseph is still a man of faith. And I think it's so incredible that he was able to reflect on his life, to see what had happened to him, and had come to this conclusion that all of those experiences were God at work in his life. And he was even able to see that that was not just for his personal benefit, but for the benefit of his family. And unknown to Joseph at this point, his journey to Egypt is the part of the beginnings of the story of the people of Israel and their journey into Egypt, their journey of prosperity, their journey of being God's people. And all of that from what looked like a really terrible situation that God was able to turn into something good. But I was kind of thinking about this and wondering, well, how has Joseph got to this place where he's able to come face to face with the people who have harmed him and meet them with grace, with compassion and with forgiveness? Is it just that he's like this amazing, great person? Could be. Is he some sort of saint who's just able to do what the rest of us wouldn't have been able to do? But I don't think so. I think that Joseph was just as ordinary as me and as you. He still felt that pain of rejection and loss. But actually, instead of ingesting that, swallowing it down and holding all those hurts, he has learned to give them to God and to trust God with his next steps. I think he learned something really important, which is that when you're in trouble, when you feel like you've fallen to the bottom of a pit, that it is God who is still there with you. And he's learned that when we spend time in God's presence, that's how we make it out of those dark places. Joseph was able to put his faith in God. And actually, if you read to the end of his story in Genesis chapter 50, Joseph is talking to his brothers after his fathers had died. And he says to them, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good." And I think sometimes it's helpful for us to remember that we serve a God who is good. He is a good father. He can't help but do good because it is who he is. And that even when trouble comes our way, even when our circumstances look dire, when we are in pain, when we are hurting, when it looks like there's trouble all around us, God is still with us and he is still able to bring good out of what looks like hurt and destruction in difficult spaces. In fact, there's a promise in Romans 8:28 that I love, and it says, "And we know that God causes all things to work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose." It's a promise that we get to take away with us, that even when we're in difficult times, even when it looks like everything is going wrong, God is not only with us, but he is able to turn those things into something good for us and for those around us. And just like Joseph, we need to trust in that promise. Have a blessed day.